Welcome back to a part 2 here on the Lady Landlords Podcast about this unicorn property that I was so fortunate to be able to get that accepted offer, and myself, our realtor, just fought so hard to be able to get that property and then lost in just what I consider dramatic form. But I'm glad you're back. If you have not gotten to see part 1 of the unicorn episode, please do make sure go back and you can watch that on the Lady Landlords podcast or also on the Lady Landlords YouTube. But go get caught up there. But tonight, what we're going to be talking about is I'm going to give you an update on what's been going on with that unicorn property. I'm also going to share with you the one thing that I have not told you about this unicorn property just yet. So I'm going to be able to give that announcement as well. And then also just want to kind of talk through what is going through kind of like next in my portfolio and where that stands, especially as I am in a place where I am wrapping up my time here in the Dominican Republic. It is finally spring. We are finally getting better weather back in the United States and in New York, so I will be heading home there. So I'm going to kind of fill you in a little bit about what is coming next as well there. But as I mentioned during our last episode in part 1, I talked about how we were so excited to be able to fight through just this competition, the high costs that are in New York right now, and how proud I was that we were able to go through this deal and had gotten that accepted offer. I also shared in part 1 the demise of that, and thank you. I got so many comments on the podcast and on the YouTube, just all about other people also being really outraged with what had happened. So thank you. I appreciate other lady landlords also validating just how I felt. And also where I still said, it's taken me quite a bit of time to be able to talk about this because I really was so upset about it. I really appreciate just having our community and having so many other women real estate investors around to say like, yeah, you should be upset. Yeah, you deserve to be bothered by this, to have issues with this. So I just want to say thank you for that and for all the people that had reached out about that situation. It also, as much as it pains me to hear that other people went through this, I will say that, I guess misery does love company sometimes, but I do appreciate all the members in our Lady Landlords Facebook group that also shared with me their experience of having a property that they were so excited for, that they were just so happy they found these amazing deals. And then unfortunately, they were just deals not meant to be. So I appreciate that. I ended part 1's episode with sharing the one thing that I had to now do as a landlord that I've never had to do before, which was actually having to move forward with a fair housing complaint against the seller of this house. As a reminder, we were told that we had the highest offer, the best terms, but yet still the seller was choosing not to sell to us. So just kind of wanted to update what that process looked like. It's really interesting. I feel like not just in New York, but really any other state, any other country, you're always going to come across that bureaucracy. So I do feel like I was pushed from one phone number that I was able to find just through a simple Google search for the state of New York that covered that specific area where this property was, that talked about those fair housing laws. I then felt like I was shuffled between people. I felt like I was leaving messages on answering machines that was just never going to be called back. So I will say, for something that usually falls under Human Rights Commission, I was just really surprised that it was really difficult to connect to the right place for something that really could be considered so serious. I left a message right after I actually had recorded the episode for part 1 of this unicorn property here. And what was interesting, I really didn't get a call back for a while, but I got a text message maybe a week or so later that said, thank you very much. We have received your file of your complaint and we will be processing in the order that we received. I got to be honest, I was a little confused by that because I just left a message on an answering machine. I didn't actually file anything. The end of this text message I received to confirm, I'm doing air quotes over here, that confirmed that they got my file, also said, please do not call us back. We do not monitor the answering machine, we will not call and give you a status update until it is your turn to get to your file. And I was like, well, what do I do now? Like, I didn't actually submit a file. I didn't submit a quote unquote application for what had happened. I called inquiring what the process really was. So it was on my agenda actually for the next day to be able to call and say, hey, what do you guys think you have for me? What else do you need from me to really be able to do that? And luckily, I actually got a call back from a woman from their office, I think the next day itself, before I got a chance to call, that actually did say, hey, we received this, and she was looking for some more information there. What I thought was really interesting was at a point she said, okay, but you have nothing in writing stating the reason of discrimination. And I was like, no, they didn't put like in an email like, hey, your husband immigrated from another country, therefore we don't want to sell to him or anything of that nature. I was like, no, like that's not like in written proof, but that's the whole point to me of an investigation, is to get that answer. And what I thought was interesting, and once again, she didn't know that I'm a landlord. She doesn't know we have the Lady Landlords community. She really remarked, well, unless they specifically put in writing a reason of discrimination against the protected classes, there might not be anything that we could do. So at that point in time, I did say like, hey, actually, I am a landlord. I tend to be on the other side of this when I'm doing especially tenant screenings. And I had explained to her that, in that sense, I was like, well, so if I as a landlord want to discriminate against one of the protected classes, as long as I don't say it out loud or as long as I don't put it in writing, then like I'm perfectly fine. And I feel like she at least kind of got my argument there. So she did say like, okay, we will look into this more. I've not gotten a call back there. So I guess now we're turning this into a 3-part series here. But I thought it was really interesting that, and I get it. I understand the need of evidence. I understand the need of proof. I understand the need of all of those things. But I felt like almost what she was telling me, I was completely discouraged, not just as a buyer, but actually as a landlord, that really I felt like the Attorney General's office of New York was telling me, well, you can discriminate, just don't put it in writing. And I honestly, I personally did not accept that as an answer. I thought that was something that really was just not appropriate at all. So I am happy that the woman that I spoke to, the attorney at the office, did understand my sentiment, did understand where I was coming from, and said, okay, yes, this does absolutely need to still be looked into. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I was very discouraged by her response of, unless they actually discriminate in writing, that there's nothing you can do. So we'll see where this goes. I'm still very happy that I went through that process. I'm still happy that I had that conversation. To be honest, I am very happy that I was not only able to do that as a person that feels wronged in this situation, buying a property, even if it was for my own personal use, but also just as information and be able to bring back and share with our community. To me, as a landlord, my responsibility is providing other humans with clean, safe, sustainable housing. And I take following fair housing guidelines very seriously. And I was just very discouraged to hear that the governing body that oversees that does not have the same care to dig into situations as much as necessarily I did. So I thought that was very interesting that they didn't have to go into that. What was interesting is this was actually the second property that we'd had a little bit of a situation with. The first property that we saw and put an offer in a few weeks before that in the state of New York, we actually don't believe was ever presented actually to the seller. Once again, we went in at the open house. We were able to get an offer in that same day and really were able to move quickly. And before my realtor was even able to follow up and get like that offer in, the seller said, no, actually, we already have an accepted offer. And our realtor was saying, well, that's interesting. You just had an open house. We told you we were going to put the offer in. Cool. That's not binding at all. But my realtor had inquired about what the process was, if they were going to do a best and final now after the open house, if they were going to negotiate and respond to every single deal one by one. And instead, she just said, no, actually, we already have an accepted offer. In New York, there has to be a document signed by a seller stating that they actually received the offer. And still to this day, now 2 months later, we've actually never even seen that document was signed. So what's interesting is that the attorney that I was talking to really said that they don't have to give a legitimate reason for why they declined the property. But once again, my argument is it's very suspicious if they're still going to put in writing that we are the highest offer. I could totally understand if I lost this property because, hey, somebody else came in, they offered more money, they offered way above what I did, it was all cash. I can understand if it was the money thing. I absolutely could. But for them to actually put in writing that we were the highest offer and had the best terms and we're still choosing, and that's a word I don't necessarily like, choosing not to sell to us. And that to me is very different. So I will have to update you guys. I have no idea. To be honest, I do not feel very confident with the attorney, with this process. It really, once again, it really discouraged me from what I heard just going through this process from fair housing. And I see why this has created so many problems. And honestly, I understand where so many tenants are coming from in this situation where they feel wronged. And I do think it is such our responsibility as landlords to do the right thing, to understand our process, to understand our laws, to make sure we understand our local laws as well, not just federal laws, but also just our own local municipalities, to really make sure that we do also understand what our responsibility is. And to me personally, I feel that if we always lead with the right foot, we also get rewarded for doing that. So I will update you guys if there's a resolution to this. I wish I had better news. I wish I had better information, but that's where we stand for now. But now let me share with you guys the one thing that I did not tell you in part one, okay, and that I've actually not shared here before about my unicorn property. So you might remember that I had mentioned last week that the unicorn property that I've been looking for years was actually to be owner occupied. It was actually going to be a property that I planned on living in. The reason for that is because I am pregnant. And it is important for us to be able to find that family home where I can bring home a baby from the hospital, where I can start this family with my husband, and where we can actually live and kind of grow from there. And I am so excited. My husband has actually been like begging for babies for years. So I am very happy that we are in a place where we are able to start a family. And I feel incredibly lucky that we are in a place where we actually do get to do that. What's been the most interesting kind of change for me in that situation is really what that almost means as a lady landlord. For me, what was interesting was when I started buying our first properties, it had nothing to do with this. It had nothing to do with the idea of really starting a family. That was not so much in my top priorities as my husband's. For me, my top priority was I wanted to be able to travel more. I wanted to live out of the United States. I wanted to be able to leave my daytime job. Those were the things that was really important to me. And within that, the overall connection between a lot of those things really is time freedom. I find it incredibly important to use the limited time that we do have here on Earth. And I really want to make sure that I can maximize the things that I do in my life for whatever the way that I see them fit. And how I see what my future looks like is going to be completely different than yours. And that's okay. And it should be that way. When I found out the news that we were pregnant, I have to be honest, like that now all of a sudden just shifts so many different perspectives. And that just shifts so many different plans and goals like in your future that, to be honest, I am still processing what that looks like. And I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to be leaning heavily on our Lady Landlords Facebook community because we have so many women in there that have day jobs, that are investors, that have multiple properties, that have multiple kids. And I'm so excited to get to start to enter this world of how women are managing those different priorities, because they are. And also still making sure that we don't lose ourselves within that, and we still have that time, that space, and that calmness also for us, which already I got to say that's been really difficult for sure. But I can't imagine what that's going to look like in a few months. So right now I'm really kind of going back and evaluating what that looks like for me and what this next chapter is supposed to look like. For me, what was so cool was growing my portfolio. I really started out in 2018 when we bought our first duplex. It was really just looking for a place for us to be able to live and let's just lower our expenses, right? We were living in New York at that time, still are. It was something that we needed to figure out, how can we really decrease our cost of living? And house hacking and buying that very first duplex was a fantastic way to be able to do that. And that all of a sudden made, especially for us in New York where we were living at the time, we got to live for free because we had bought a multifamily, rented out one unit, and lived in the other side. And it was covering the mortgage. It was fantastic. Then after that, in 2019, we moved to, hey, let's buy another property that can help cover bills. How can we cover our utilities? How can we cover our electric bill? How can we cover car payments? All of those different things kind of started. In 2020, we were able to grow our portfolio where we were able to retire my husband, which was a game changer for us during the pandemic. So many people were losing jobs. My husband was laid off. His business then ended up closing. And it was so nice just to be able to give him that reassurance that we were going to be okay. And we had real estate as that backup, that we had that income coming in. We went to a place where we said, great, 2021, let's buy some properties. We can buy the next property to help us be able to upgrade what our travel is going to look like. In 2022, we said, okay, now we're going to use real estate to be able to fund what our dream home down here in the Dominican Republic is going to look like so we can live out of the United States. In 2023, I said, okay, I want to use real estate to finish replacing my income. I want to replace my medical insurance, my bonuses, the money that goes into my 401k, not just what my income was. I wanted to make sure I got all those other perks from the 9 to 5 also covered within that before I decided to retire. Those things needed to be checked off too for me. And now it's crazy. Here we are at the beginning of 2025. And I am realigning my goals to what this is going to look like as a full-time investor. But how do I put now real estate costs? One thing I know about babies, and it's probably maybe the only thing I know about babies or kids, is that they're expensive. And I now have a different drive and motivation to say, how can I now use real estate as the vehicle to cover costs, to be able to raise a family? One of the reasons we're moving and are looking for this owner-occupied property is, to be honest, all I want to do is go live next to my mom. So Emilio and I are moving to a place in New York that I never thought I would live. I'm a city kid. I am moving to a place that I feel like is going to be very different lifestyle, that is definitely going to be much more suburban. I actually would kind of call it rural. And I know other people would not say that Dutchess County in New York is rural, but for me it is. And for my husband, who also is a city kid, I feel like this is going to be a drastic change for us. And I am so grateful that we invested in real estate and that we took a chance and we made the moves that we did so we can continue to use real estate as that vehicle to move with our changing priorities, to move with the things that we need. It is the money from our other real estate that is going to pay for now us to have this new house. And what's cool is that we were able to actually calculate out, now when we move out of our current property, we're going to turn our current property clearly into a rental. And we're already factoring in the income coming from that rental to be then going towards not either the down payment or then towards the mortgage on the new property. So honestly, it was able to put us in a different buyer's bracket, in a different budget, which also is fantastic for the area that we're looking for, because we can say, hey, we're going to have an extra $2,000 coming in every single month from the current unit I'm living in that can kind of go towards that. And that makes a huge, huge difference now moving into a larger house, a single family, and, now needing an extra bedroom, which is craziness. I still can't believe it. But it's just really shifting what these priorities look like. And I think that's what's so cool about real estate investing, is that we each got into real estate investing for a completely different reason. We each came to this because we were looking for something different. But as time goes on, we change, our portfolio changes, life changes, And we could still use real estate investing as that vehicle to be able to now say, well, how is real estate going to look different and how is it going to support me in this next journey? Once again, it's not just that idea of saying, hey, I can rent out my current property. What is that going to be? Cool. Now, if I can get $2,000 for my current rental and I had a budget of whatever, $5,000 a month on a mortgage moving forward, well, now I can actually go get up to a $7,000 mortgage because I have that extra $2,000 coming in. Or I say, I'm going to keep my costs lower. And now I'm only going to be paying $3,000 out of pocket because I have $2,000 coming in. So my $5,000 mortgage now goes down to $3,000. So it's a different way to kind of play with that, especially when you're thinking competitive market, which is really what I'm shopping in. We're still over ask. Actually, it's not a unicorn property. I'll call it a baby unicorn. I like the house, but there was another house that we found that we put an offer in on, and I felt really, really good about it. And our offer was incredibly solid and I loved it. And it was something that I was able to say, yeah, I feel comfortable still at this number, but I was able to go with the offer that I went with because I knew I had that extra property that I was going to be renting out once we moved. And just knowing that I can have that peace of mind that my cost of living is going to now be covered in a single family home in a nice neighborhood with that extra bedroom for a kid is really going to be incredibly insane. Like that just kind of blew my mind. But regardless of price, regardless of numbers, the other side of this and the other shifting priorities is I now get to look at what is my life going to look like? What does quote unquote motherhood and a working mom, like what does that look like? And that's what, like I said, ladies, I'm going to be coming to you and Lady Landlords for the advice and the questions about all about how that balance looks like. But I am so fortunate and so lucky to be in a position where I can really start by mapping out what I want that to look like. Do I want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do I want to decrease the hours I even work within my own real estate business? Do I want to still retain that? What type of maternity leave do I want to give myself? I worked in pharmaceuticals. I worked in hospitals for 15 years. And most of those hospitals and most of those pharmaceutical companies didn't even have maternity leave. I can get short-term disability for being pregnant, which is an interesting way to call it, but there was a maternity leave to it. I now get to control what that looks like. I posted on my Instagram a couple days ago, actually on Easter Monday. I made a post all about getting to control what your PTO, your paid time off, looks like. Now I'm in a position to actually design what my maternity leave looks like. And I feel incredibly lucky to be able to do that. So I am going to circle back with Lady Landlords and share what that's going to look like, but I am going to take my own time. I talk often in our group on our podcast all about how really building out what that plan looks like, starting with what your goal is, the way that you envision what life should look like, and reverse engineering what that plan is. And I'm here to tell you, I am going to go through and actually take my own advice. And I am going to go and I'm going to do my own little vision board about what I want the end of this year to look like, what I want the first few months, maybe the first year of motherhood to look like. And I'm going to go through that and then reverse engineer of what that process is going to look like and how I can get there and how I could do that with my finances and how I could do that with real estate and how I could do that with the strategy that I have in place. And I'm going to follow the exact same steps that I always recommend for our lady landlords when it comes to reaching your goals in real estate, because it's usually not about the real estate. It's not here to be a landlord. It's to get us the things that we want in life. And right now, I need to figure out what I want to have in life in this next chapter. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to come back. I'll share on an upcoming episode really kind of how I decided to kind of brainstorm and build out that blueprint for what the next couple of years are going to look like in my life from a now changed and updated priorities kind of perspective. And hopefully that'll be able to help you kind of walk through scaling your portfolio and also hitting some of the goals that you have. But otherwise, I am very excited to share that news with you. And there'll be more information, more updates coming. And like I said, I'm going to be reaching out to a lot of our lady landlords for support myself. Otherwise, thank you very much for tuning in today. Please do make sure to hit the subscribe button or make sure to follow me here. I am going to actually be doing another update. I've gotten a lot of requests about how I was able to do open houses not using a realtor from the Dominican Republic. I did an open house Last week in New York, I had 2 units that had recently been updated, tenants moved out, and was able to get showings from there, was able to get people pre-qualified. I had over 100 people request to come see the property. So I'm going to walk you guys through my process to get that scheduled, to be able to get that to be a successful open house and be able to get those applications in there. So if you're interested in that, like I said, please do hit that subscribe button or that follow button to make sure that you get notified the next time we go live here and have a recording for you. And thank you for just allowing me to share my news and also hopefully inspire you that regardless of what your personal situation is, regardless of what your goals are in real estate investing, no matter where you are, if it's leaving the 9-to-5 job, if it is having a kid, if you're single, if you're married, whatever that may look like, whatever that is, real estate can be an amazing vehicle to get you there too. So feel free, let me know down in the comments what you are hoping to accomplish within real estate and how you're using this as a vehicle. And I would love to just see what you are working on and what you are focusing on in your goals too. So thank you very much. And I will see you all back in the Lady Landlords Facebook community. Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords Podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlords.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.